Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us. Another episode of Catching Up with Jacob, and Jacob's on the East Coast. Jacob Prash, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Blessings in Jesus from the Sunshine State of Florida. Wonderful to be with you. Let's see what the Lord is saying this week to us and to everyone.
Amen. Great blessing to have you, Jacob, on the East Coast. And David, you're not too far from Jacob.
Yeah, on the other side of the house. So it's beautiful down here in Florida, and we're enjoying it. We have a meeting tonight and a private meeting, but and then tomorrow we have a meeting at a community center not too far. That is on the website, the address and time, and then also next week you can check the website, and we're going to be in Southern Florida next weekend. So,
All right, yeah, we'll come back to that in a moment. Just want to introduce everybody before we make announcements. Jay, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. I'm here to press buttons and to make snide remarks.
Well, glad you could do that, and we're happy that you can. Davey, good morning. Saturday morning in Australia. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. Thanks. Good to be here with you guys.
Amen. Thank you, brother. Yes. So, what David was talking about, he is, if you go to the Memorial website, memorial.org, the itinerary section, there's all the meetings. David, you said today is private, tomorrow and Sunday, it's on the website. And next week, you're going to be in Southern Florida. What city in Southern Florida?
Davie down near Miami. It's I
All
think
right.
it's on a university.
Yeah, Dade County. All right. Very good. Miami. Yeah. Well, a lot of family members of mine live there or around the area.
Hopefully they
So I
come.
never met. Yeah, some of them never met, but a lot of Cubans, Venezuelans,
Wow.
Nicaragua, you name it, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans. We have to have a Spanish one out there. So that's really what we need to do next
Yes.
time. So
Yeah.
looking for it. But Jacob, you haven't been down there in quite some time, haven't you? Down to Southern Florida?
I have not. I have not been in Southern Florida for quite some time. I mean, I've been to Southern Florida many times, but not in recent years. And I'm looking forward to being in Miami-Dade at the university. So please join us. The details are on the Moriel website itinerary page, or you can just Google Moriel itinerary, and it will give you the times, details, location. Look forward to
Amen.
seeing.
Yeah, good job, brother. Then you guys are jumping over on the West Coast, on the west side of on California, and you're going to be here with us in Devore, Southern California, and details are on the website as well. 10 o'clock on Saturday with Dave Rosetto and Jacob Prash. That would be awesome. That's going to be really, really good. And on Sunday morning as well, Jacob Prash is back. Dave Rosetto will be there as well, and that's going to be a lot of fun. So the title of the meetings is called "Stay in the Course." Stay in the course. And it's about the gospel and it's about prophecy, because those are the two things that the church had to be really, really, really focused on. And what is the Lord doing and telling us it's coming, and keep preaching the gospel, making disciples. So we're talking a lot about that on Saturday and on Sunday, March 9th and March 10th. Details are on the website. If you want to come on Saturday, we are providing lunch. And I think Jacob's buying, right? Jacob, you're buying lunch for us.
I'll buy it. I'll
Buying lunch for us. No, lunch will be provided. There's children's ministry. There's the stuff to do with the kids. So if you have kids, just come and join us. That'll be a lot of fun. And more details to come. But it's on the website. If you want to call the church, Community Church of Devore, the website, ccothetruth.org, and you can find out more information from there. So that's going to be awesome. And you got the next few weeks covered, Jacob. So that's going to be great. So, Jacob, let's catch up. Let's do a hot take. Can we do a hot take? I think it's time for a hot take. What's going on with the case with Trump? What's going on with the case that they can't even appeal it? They can't even appeal it. And just the corruption. And like we've said here, it's not just about him, but if they could do that to him, they could do that to pretty much anybody, you and I, whoever. So, Jacob, go ahead.
A politicized criminal justice system. That's what you've got. Selective prosecution, selective non-prosecution. There is no reason that Hillary Clinton was not criminally prosecuted, except politics. There was no reason, absolutely no reason whatsoever, that Hunter Biden was not criminally prosecuted, except politics by now. No reason that Biden was not impeached. No reason. Two standards. Not only that, the biggest people, it doesn't matter who you are, if you go against the system. Think of Robert Kennedy. His family name is an icon in the Democratic Party. They're denying him Secret Service protection, despite the fact that his father and his uncle were both assassinated in the most famous political assassinations in American, if not human history. Just politically decided. Dr. Robert Malone, the patriarch, the pioneer of biogenetic engineering using messenger RNA, they just sequestered him, put a lid on this Nobel laureate who invented mRNA technology. Just put a lid on him because of what he said about COVID. It doesn't matter who you are, they can stop anybody. They can stop a billionaire like Donald Trump. Letitia James ran for office with a political agenda, not a legal agenda to fight crime. She's not interested in fighting crime, apparently. She's interested in bringing down Donald Trump, and she stated that when she ran for political office. Then you have a liberal judge with obvious bias, now trying to deny appeal and saying if you don't pay the $353 million within 30 days, we're going to move for seizure of assets if Letitia James wants it. Why is that woman not up for disbarment? Why is that judge not being removed from the bench? It is all corrupt. Democracy is an illusion. It is not even real anymore. It is gone. The court system is a political organ. The FBI is a political organ. The Justice Department is, again, the Department of Injustice. The FBI is nothing more than the Federal Bureau of Intimidation. It is gone. We are no longer living in a democracy, in effect. That is the reality. Can it be recaptured? That's a question. But the battle is not primarily political. It is spiritual. As we've been saying for years, as we've been warning for more than 20 years, democracy is evaporating. It is under attack. And the reason it is evaporating and disappearing in Australia, in New Zealand, in Canada, in Great Britain, in the United States, in all of the Protestant democracies, especially the English-speaking ones, most notably. The reason it's happening is that we have rejected the Judeo-Christian principles upon which it is predicated. The idea that our laws come from God, not from men, not from politicians, not from corrupt governments, is being attacked. They're calling you a religious extremist and a dangerous right-wing nationalist if you believe human rights come from God. And they're actually saying this and getting away with it. There is no justice. There's only injustice. One bright spot on the horizon is some people are waking up and putting two and two together. We are seeing people, even in the political realm, people who are in no sense conservatives, no sense pro-Christian or pro-Judeo-Christian. People like Bill Maher are seeing what's happening and they're unable to deny it because they have some semblance of honesty, even though I don't like them or agree with them. Another is Senator Fetterman from Pennsylvania. I think that guy it was horrible that man was elected, but he sees what is happening.
Mm.
There are even people who are left center are seeing the undeniable realities of what's happening, to common sense, to logic, to any kind of equitable sense of justice. They're seeing it. And some of those people are going towards social conservatism, and some of them are even beginning to consider the truths of the gospel and of the prophetic significance of world events. And these are people who in the past have had no Christian orientation whatsoever. I would also say, despite the widespread stupidity of American Jews voting Democrat, there is an increasing alienation, even in states like New York, from the Democratic Party because of Biden, because of Obama, because of the squad. Some Jews, some are beginning to wake up and realize, Alan Dershowitz being one of them, most conspicuously, but he's not the only one. So some people will wake up, but the general trend is what it is.
Yeah. All right, Jacob. Very good. That's your hot take of the week. Jacob, the violence that it's erupted in these states that have basically harbored a lot of criminals that have come through the border. I mean, we're talking criminals. We're not just talking about families that are coming in. We're talking people that have come in with the desire to create panic, create attacks, not only Chinese nationalists, Muslims, people from Africa, obviously Latin America, but the multiple stabbings in New York, attacking cops, the stabbings in Montana, the attacks in Florida. I mean, I hate to repeat the same thing, but it is a dire situation going on in the border United States.
There are those with a right to complain and those with no right to complain. People who have not voted for these agendas have every right to complain and to be up in arms and to realize they cannot trust government, that government no longer represents them. They have every right to realize that, as Victor David Hanson said, Barack Obama was the architect of this chaos.
Absolutely right. He's right.
He and the stupid people who voted for him. Okay, they reap what they sow. The decline in standard of living and family income for Black families, 98% of them voted for him. If you're Black and you're poorer than you were before Biden was president or before Obama was president, that's what you voted for. Don't look for any sympathy. Don't whinge about anybody. It's what you voted for. Jews who are seeing themselves and afraid to send their kids to university campuses.
Seriously. Yeah, it's a mess.
If you're a stupid enough Jew to vote Democrat, I'm sorry what's happening to your kids, but if you and they voted Democrat, that's what you voted for. You have no right to whinge. No right to whinge whatsoever. If you were a California liberal who gets raped in front of your house by an illegal immigrant, well, I don't agree with it, but you have no right to complain. It's what you voted for. You're only reaping what you sowed. It's what you chose. It's what you chose. This goes for Jews, goes for students, goes for Blacks, goes for suburban liberal voting housewives. It's what you voted for. Stop complaining. You got what you wanted. Now, you're going to come to your senses, or you're going to keep digging your own grave? Well, many of them are going to continue digging their own grave.
You know, it's ironic. I want to say it was comical, but to see Schumer complaining about what the Jews are going through for many years, he was the architect of trying to get New York to be a sanctuary state to bring any Muslim, any person, anyone coming in. But now they're sort of waving the white flag and said, this is not what we signed up for. That goes for Gillibrand, that goes for Schumer. A lot of the senators are absolutely insane in what their policies have been.
That's correct. That is absolutely correct.
And yet, Jacob, cases like, well, let's talk about the one in Indiana, the Catholic family, right? That is being targeted by the government. The government doesn't go after criminals, but they go after a family who has I believe is a son, and I don't know if it's a son or a daughter, but it's their child taken away from them because they won't call them by their I guess preferred pronoun.
This is a red state. This is even happening in a red state. Now, if it can happen in a red state, it can certainly happen in a blue one. Understand, social services in many states, even red ones, are saturated with homosexuals and lesbians. They are there to represent that bias. They're in the school system. They're in social services. They're in the in the district attorney's offices and prosecution services in some states. But they're certainly in schools, and they're in the education system, and they're certainly in the teachers' unions, and they are certainly in social services. To take this Catholic family, and I'm not a Catholic and I don't agree with Catholicism, but I agree with parental rights, that without any court decision, just the decision of bureaucrats, politically appointed bureaucrats, they can take your child because you refer to your child by the opposite sex. And then they tried to say, well, no, it's because of an eating disorder. What did they do? Lock them in a room and starve them? Many children have eating disorders. There are teenage girls who are borderline anorexia because they're trying to mimic pop singers that they see on
That's
MTV.
right.
You know what I'm saying? It's a parental family responsibility. The health of children is first and foremostly the responsibility of the parents. You can't show any criminal neglect. They couldn't show any criminal neglect. There was not even a court procedure. There was not even a
That's
hearing.
right.
It was just corrupt bureaucrats who are going to burn in hell. And I have no sympathy for them anymore. I would hope they repent as a Christian, but when they burn in hell, they have already lit the fire. That's what it says in Romans. Let them burn.
Yeah, this is a Cox family, and it's a son. There's a son, and he struggled with his sexuality. Now, it was reported probably by the school. I think David talked about that. It's probably by the school who reported it, and now it went. The child was removed. It was upheld by the Indiana court, and now hopefully they go to the Supreme Court. But cases like this, Jacob, it's incredibly infuriating. This is to be absolutely upset.
It was a bureaucrat who did it, not a court. Just the court
That's right.
upheld it. Now it's under
The court
appeal.
upheld it. Yeah, the court upheld it. That's right. So, you know,
Now
this is
that judge should be removed from the bench.
yeah. No, I agree.
At the very least.
And it's in Indiana too, of all places, a much more conservative state.
Yes.
Much more conservative. It's like it's you know it's like Montana and stuff like that. If it happened there, imagine in New York, imagine in California. This is and there's threats already against parents that if you don't,
this is another one of the dilemmas you see. The American Midwest was originally settled by the French. If you look to this day, there's a Roman Catholic influence all the way from New Orleans and Baton Rouge up the Mississippi, all the way to Detroit is a French name. Terre Haute, Indiana is a French name. These cities even have French names. You know, Dubuque, Iowa, and things like this. Des Moines, Iowa. Louisville, Kentucky. You know, St. Louis. These are all French. You have a high Roman Catholic population in a state like Indiana, Notre Dame University, and things of that nature. So Catholics have a sanitized version of what Jews face. They tended to be Democrat voters, but now they're caught in a moral dilemma. Just look at Kennedy, Irish Catholic. He's caught in a dilemma. He sees what's become of the Democratic Party.
No, I know it's becoming a real mess. David, what do you think of this case? I mean, you would think of this case in maybe New York or California, but in Indiana, but this is part and parcel of the school system, the society, the media, and kids get confused. They push them along with that. Now, removal from their home, removal from parents.
Yeah, it's Indiana has Indianapolis, which has liberal pockets. You know, most of the red is around the rural areas, okay, the smaller town. So you have these liberal judges. I don't know if they elect their judges there like they do in Pennsylvania. And so we have liberal judges in Pennsylvania in the cities, but not in the rural areas. So you have that divide. So you get these guys that without a law, a bureaucrat can do this job and
that's crazy. Yeah, this is unbelievable.
Fortunately, there is a ruling coming by the Supreme Court that could rule that the laws that are passed by the lawmakers cannot be written by the bureaucrats, because the bureaucrats that they have in are generally Democrat, extremely liberal in Washington, and they just write them like they want, and what they end up doing, bureaucracy kills democracy. And so hopefully the Supreme Court will overrule that they can do that, and then a lot of rules can be undone that could maybe reestablish some freedom back to America and back to their families. But what I think we need is what's worse than this is that there could have been a person that took that child and took it to Oregon or Washington. It had transsexual operation.
Yeah, the surgery.
We need, like in the 30s, we had the Mann Act, which if a man took a woman across the state border for illicit reasons to have sex, things like this, you could be prosecuted with a felony. We need a national act that if a person takes without permission a child across the border for transsexual reasons, that's a felony. You
That's
know,
right.
but those states, Washington, Oregon, allow that to happen. They'll
Yeah.
take them and hide them from their parents and allow the operation.
Yes, and some of these youth shelters are basically mandated by the state to actually not report them, not
Yeah.
report their children. If they find them, if they come in, they're not to report them to their parents. And if they have sexual issues, that have some kind of gender, they don't call it gender dysphoria, but that's what they have, then they immediately have to take them to a hormone therapy place, a hospital, and either get them on treatment or eventually perform the surgery. So
I'm
unreal.
not a parent, Marco, but I don't know why every parent in America that loves their child is not up in arms and calling their representatives,
Mm,
calling their state legislatures, calling their state senators, and demanding
yeah.
halt to this.
Many are probably,
Inaction by the populace, they've gone to sleep. Pick up a phone, call them, and start demanding that your child is protected by the
That's right.
parent.
That's right. Jay, go ahead.
I think many, unfortunately, are probably scared of being called a homophobe. And
Mm,
something that David said that really sparked something was bureaucracy, about the bureaucracy. Everywhere
yeah.
we turn, we see the federal government trying to take over states' rights. So it doesn't
Yep.
matter if you're in a conservative state. When you have
Yep.
someone like Rachel Levine as
Yep.
your health
Oh,
secretary,
geez Louise.
she's starting a program nationally that allows for foster trans adoptive parents to take the children from their biological parents so that they can transition. This is a national program being rolled out by her or
Funded
him.
by the taxpayer.
It.
Yeah, Richard. Yeah, Richard.
Well,
Sorry,
I hope
I misgendered twice.
how will Richard not again? How will Richard not spend eternity in the lake of fire?
Mm.
They can mock it now, but he's not going to mock it when he's there.
Yeah, it just seems like this whole administration, one of the most deviant administrations that I've ever seen. It
Yep.
just promotes this a continue. I mean, even Obama's administration, as crazy as they were, they did not take it this far. But now, of course, Obama's administration is back in, and now they're taking it to the logical conclusion what was going to happen. I remember, Jay, you know, if you remember 2014, remember talking to Jacob about 2014 when they basically legalized gay marriage.
Yes.
And we talked about it. And we talked about it. The Supreme Court ruled on it. Obama lit up the White House and it says, you know what's coming? It's going to be transgenderism. I remember Jacob talking about it. It is going to be an onslaught of evil against children because they won't stop.
Yep. And we may particularly thank Ronald Reagan for appointing Sandra Day O'Connor to the Supreme Court because she wrote the court's decision outlawing the Texas anti-sodomy laws. That opened the door for the avalanche that followed it. Thank you, Ronald Reagan. And thank you, naive Christians who think the Republican Party is some kind of a salvation for America.
Well, look at Roberts. Look at Roberts.
And we talked about, Marco, we talked about opening the door once that's gone, once that homosexual marriage comes in, that any type of marriage should come in because now there's no line.
Yeah,
Okay?
it's blurred.
We now see programs on television. Get me a sister wife. We see the explosion in Utah and places of 50,000 fundamental polygamous marriages. It's just exploding, and people marrying animals and farm
That's
animals.
correct. That is correct.
Every sort of immorality and deviancy known to man. And now I seen one the other day. A woman married an AI image.
Yep. You know, more than 25 years ago, possibly maybe 28 years ago, in Britain, but I said it in America, but it was first in Britain, 28 years ago. I said, look at first century Rome. The normalization of homosexuality and bisexuality is socially and culturally normative. Pedophilia, socially accepted. And then you're going to see bestiality, socially accepted. These things are going to happen. Obviously, the fundamentalist Mormons and maybe even the mainstream Mormons will revert to their traditional polytheism, polyamory. I mean, the polygamy.
Yeah.
Polytheism.
No,
Polygamy.
polygamy and polyany.
Polyany.
Yeah.
Polyamory.
And
Yeah,
then of course, the Bush family and people like this will do anything the Muslims want. So you're going to have the CAIR pushing for multiple marriages of Muslims, or Olmert marrying her brother.
They already looked the other way in England,
Yep.
Jacob, and here too.
You know that the Republican rhinos like Bush, they would do anything. Whatever Saudi Arabia wants, Cheney and Bush would do it. Well, it's no better for anybody else. They will just go along with it. They want 4 wives, they can have 4 wives.
If I may, Jacob and Marcus said something very important. Jacob said it's the first century, and Marcus, you said this administration is the most deviant. If I could compare Joe Biden to any Roman emperor, I would go with Tiberius. And as you remember, Tiberius had his little palatial palace in Capri.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that reminds me exactly of all the things that Joe Biden is accused of. Remember, the Emperor Tiberius had his little fish. Well, Joe likes to smell little children and women's hair. And it's a scary, scary thing.
Yeah. This is Richard Levine. This is his quote. Kids really need a home where somebody understands them sexually.
That's what he said. Because that's what parents are supposed to do, right?
Oh, man. If some guy said that about my kid, let's just say, I can't say it in the air, but they would be absolutely done. That somebody needs, who's going to understand him sexually? You, Richard? You got to understand him sexually? This is by far the most deviant. I don't even know what his title is. Assistant Secretary of Health. Secretary.
And Biden promoted, made him a 4-star admiral.
Secretary of Filth. That's what he is. He's the Secretary of Filth. But anyway, he got through the Senate, the hearing. I couldn't believe that he got through. But anyway, that's what
helped.
Yeah, thank you, Republicans, and thank you, the Supreme Court as well. In 2014, they Roberts and all those guys, Roberts and co. But Jacob, let's talk about something also as nefarious as this. What's going on with all the hacking and cyber attack? It seems like 2 years ago, we were talking about Cyber Polygon, the World Economic Forum, talking about cyber threats coming. And now it's ramped up to the point where now, I don't know, Christopher Wray maybe stopped looking into Christian's files or something like that, but he comes out of the bullpen to figure out, oh yeah, we got a problem with the CCP, we got a problem with some Chinese hackers, and we really need to get a hold of Volt Typhoon, who's creating quite a bit of stir in American infrastructure. Go ahead, Jacob.
Well, to begin with, initially you had the Five Eyes: the United States, Great Britain, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, the English-speaking democracies. The real basis of international defense cooperation is not NATO. It is the Five Eyes.
That's
the Five Eyes trumps the importance of NATO in the eyes of Washington. Okay? It's Pine Bluffs in Australia. It's Cheltenham, England. It's Cyprus. It's Fort Meade, Maryland. That is the basis of the Five Eyes. Okay? The British have GCHQ. The Americans have the NSA. Now, one of the things that has happened, the first thing that has happened is the NSA, instead of focusing on what it is supposed to focus on, was focusing on being the deep state and spying on Americans. It was diverted away from watching our enemies.
Yeah.
They should have, to watching us.
Yeah, parents of children that don't want their kids sexualized. Yeah.
Part of the attack on democracy. Okay, that was the first. Then you had the Stuxnet. The Israelis and Americans cooperated against Iran, introduced a virus for the computer programs being used in atomic weapons development in Iran. It was the CIA, NSA, and it was the Israelis together. Okay, remember, a lot of American high-tech companies outsourced their R&D to Israel, to Israeli companies, or even a lot of the Israeli companies, in fact, are owned by American companies in Silicon Valley, and this involves defense contracts. It's not really publicly talked about too much, but there's certainly has been cooperation between the American intelligence community in Israel and this area of cyber intelligence. Well, in response to that, you have China, Russia, and Iran aligning. They are cooperating against the West.
That's
They
right.
have their version of the Five Eyes under development. And they particularly, of course, hate the fact that America cooperated with Israel against Iran and possibly China and Russia. Well, they certainly did against Russia. They have built their equivalent. And so while under the corruption of the Obama administration, the deep state behaved unconstitutionally and contrary to its mandate and began spying domestically on Americans, diverting resources away from where it should have went, watching Iran, watching China, watching Putin. You have the mess you have now.
That's right.
A major factor.
That's right. Absolutely.
The usual corruption of the deep state.
No, this particular document that came to light, it's called it's from a company called private security contractor called Axum. I guess that would be in Mandarin or mean something. And basically Chinese hackers, CCP hackers, which is like a whole army, target American infrastructure. Any company, anything related to Tibetans, Uyghurs, anything like that dealing with Taiwan, it's all going to be targeted. And Christopher Wray comes before Congress and says, yeah, we got this problem. And I just, it made me so angry. We got this problem. No kidding. No kidding.
Like it came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You know what I'm drawn back to? I'm drawn back to Winston Churchill in the 1930s. And I'm back to Billy Mitchell in the 1930s. Billy Mitchell predicted Pearl Harbor in detail 18 years before it happened. He was warning 18 years before it happened. And so the U.S. military court-martialed him for telling the truth and calling it right. It's the corruption and incompetence of the American government.
Yes.
Churchill was warning going back to Munich, what Hitler really was and what he would do. And instead, Britain went with appeasement. Churchill was vindicated. Billy Mitchell was vindicated. They were vindicated by history, but it was too late. It was too late. The damage had been done. Well, that's the same kind of situation you have now. You can thank Obama. You can thank Biden. You have a buffoon, Austin, an ignorant buffoon for a Secretary of Defense who's in hospital with critical condition and the commander-in-chief doesn't know it at a time when American-owned ships are being attacked in the Red Sea.
Yeah, with no solution. No solution.
No solution. You got stupid people. He says his priorities are woke and inclusivism. That's the defense priorities of this buffoon, Austin. This is the kind of nonsense you're dealing with. And of course, they'll play the usual card, which is race.
Yes.
When you have someone like former Congressman Allen West, who's an Afro-American and a patriot, and he's competent in what he says. No, the media has to ignore him or attack him. Black America has to be told to get him. He's a traitor to the black race, okay? Go after a competent Black American and instead celebrate the buffoon, Austin. And when the buffoon says that his priorities are climate change and inclusivism, when our enemies are on the warpath, you speak against him, you're a racist.
Yeah.
That's just the way it works. Just Zelenskyism.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, Jacob. We'll talk about AI in a moment, but the Five Eyes. I read the report. The Five Eyes, who are constrained by law to a certain degree, to use disruptive technology. The CCP is not, and these hacker groups are not. Absolutely. So, biotech, robotics, infrastructure, water, light, banks, utilities are all in danger of being targeted by these, by basically this Chinese hacker group. They go by Vol Typhoon. And Jacob, do you think that's what happened with AT&T? You had that problem yesterday?
I'd be surprised if it wasn't a factor in what happened yesterday.
Unbelievable.
I was in
I
the
mean, I was,
airport in Atlanta. Atlanta Airport, Hartfield, terrible airport, is America's largest airport. America's largest airport. There was pandemonium among people unable to try to call it.
People were
Nobody could
having
call
to
anybody.
go back and get tickets and stuff.
oh
That
man.
it was quite the time. But look, we have an incompetent Biden that can't even make it up the stairs on a plane versus Putin, who is flying supersonic nuclear planes
Yeah.
and kind of knows what he's doing. Now, I'm not lauding him, but it's quite the comparison of leadership that we have
Mm,
right now. From the
mm,
head down, our government is sick and
mm,
incompetent.
mm. No, 100%, 100%. It was pretty massive. I remember getting my phone, and I have AT&T, and it said SOS. I couldn't call. I couldn't just send a text message. I have little kids, and I'm wondering, like, man, if something like that happened, people have to have some kind of recourse. Now, obviously, most people have cell phones, but people have satellite, you use satellites and things like that. All that infrastructure can go very, very easily down the drain if something like that happened. And emergency services experiencing issues. It was really bad. And Homeland Security is investigating, but it's pretty simple to know. Look, the CCP saying they have hackers. Volt Typhoon is hacking, and yet you have to investigate. How much do you have to investigate? This is the U.S. is really under, in my opinion, the judgment of God because of all the things that we have allowed. As Jacob talked about it earlier, the abandonment of the Judeo-Christian faith, the gospel, the belief in Christ and his church, and that this is the way that God is going to work in the world. That's complete. That they're persecuting believers. They're arresting parents. Look at this family in Indiana. Obviously, they're not getting them for their faith specifically, but that is what's going on in America. And I could see this horrible situation happening, and it's a war of AIs because it's the AIs that they're using in Volt Typhoon, the Chinese hackers, and then the Five Eyes are trying to counteract their attacks with AI. So it's an AI war that most people don't, I couldn't really understand it to the degree of, technological advancements in AI. And we'll get to AI in a moment because
There's
that's
something else, Marco,
pretty
because of
crazy.
the advanced applications of AI technology, the advancements just technologically, just in the basic technology itself is going to be is going to be um, catalyzed. It'll be catalyzed
Huh.
because of the defense application. So when a technology exists and it becomes a defense application that's needed in a defense scenario or confrontation, that is going to expedite technological development in AI. So it will not just affect the cyber wars, it'll affect the development of AI in itself. Much
Oh.
the same as the space program. Because of the Cold War, the space program was expedited. And
Mm.
because of that, miniature computers, everything from miniature computers to Teflons, were invented for the space program because they needed them for defense applications. So once you have a war can drive technology,
Mm.
uh, and it's going to advance the pace at which AI is being developed.
Incredible, isn't
You know
it?
what I'm saying?
Yeah. It is really a race for AI, and of course
Yes.
that comes with a lot of the other things that come with it. But
Once the technology
obviously,
has a defense application, it is going to have ramifications not just for defense, but for the technology itself. Whether it's used for a consumer durable or something else. Take
yeah,
Teflon, we use it for our skillets, right?
yeah,
It was invented. It was invented as a safety substance for heating food in outer space.
yeah. That's true. Yeah, that's true. Now, some of
Marco, I don't mean
go
to
ahead. Go ahead.
tout me. I'm an old-fashioned guy, but I printed all my tickets. I have a folder of everything. I know it's kind of silly, but I was okay yesterday,
Amen.
And
Amen.
I've
I have
had
a
it
simple
help me
way.
before with reservations down at like getting cars and stuff like that. So I have a folder when I travel, and it's in paper.
when David has a problem technically, he yells Siri. And when I have a problem, I yell Mia.
If you remember in 2018, Google was attacked by
Yep.
China and Russia. It is 2018, and obviously, it was quite extensive repairs that they had to do because of the hacking that they were going through. But you can see that our world is much different now, let's say, than 1972 when they had another hack, or no, sorry, another system down on AT&T, or when they had the Carrington event in 1859, where there was hardly anything that was, electronic or of any sort at the time. So, Jacob, they talked about this solar flare, and they try to blame it on the solar flare. Obviously,
Yeah.
it was a spoof to do that. But it's speaking of the solar flare, though, what kind of massive damage would be a solar flare in our technical world?
Well, if you listen to the people who talk about such things, particularly the Christians, they'll talk about solar flares, but they will say that's not because they're so statistically rare to happen on that level and do any permanent damage. They may fry some technologies. Okay, they might cause some silicon chips to become dysfunctional, even on a systemic scale. The real danger of the people who looked at such things, particularly Chuck Missler, was electromagnetic pulse weapons. It's not the solar flares. It's man-made technologies that can do the same thing. You can't control when a solar flare is going to happen.
No.
Control an EMP. That was more the thinking in cyber warfare.
Right. Yeah, and they had that technology, whether it's North Korea, Russia, Iran, they could do that. Now,
and then the other thing, Marco, with the solar flares, it generally is going to be located in just one part of the earth. Like the one that happened yesterday was mainly in Asia, Africa, is where it was centered.
Yeah.
Solar flares are like, solar flares are like eclipses. They're geocentric. They're specific.
And now these happen. They happen all the time. And now with every 10, 11, 15 years, the poles of the sun flip, which cause more mass ejections, and so they're worried about this happening in the next few years. And also,
for sure,
we have much more technology than we did 10 years ago, and 20 years ago. So people are so dependent, and so people should, if they're smart, they should have things that can operate outside of the system. What happens if your electricity goes out? What happens if your phone goes out? Are you taking any precautions in this day and age? I mean,
correct.
People freaking out, no phones, they're dead. Work.
It's like the apocalypse came. No phone, no Netflix, no Twitter. People were
you had to talk to the guy next to you.
Who could do that now? Senator Rubio comes out and he's just warning 100 times worse than any AT&T outage. He says if the cyber attack continues by the Chinese revolt typhoon, and he says it's not just going to be your phone, it's going to be your water, it's going to be your power, it's going to be your bank. Now, obviously, Rubio's been speaking out. He's been really quiet over the last few years. Now, maybe elections coming up or something. He's got to come out and do it. But the Chinese demand that the U.S. stop the support of Taiwan, which this is, coordinated or not, whatever we think of it. The Republican chair of the House Select Committee, Mike Gallagher, goes to Taiwan, meets with the new president, and immediately China retaliates and says that they don't want this to happen. I think they took over a boat. It was a Coast Guard boat that in Taiwan. It was a tourist boat, an escalation of tension. So the Chinese took over a tourist boat in Taiwan. So it's happening, Jacob, as we speak. You mentioned China's in dire strait economically, and so this is part of the retaliation.
Another thing, Marco, is they're doing this in the Philippines. They're doing provocative things against the Filipino islands and against their fishing vessels, and even.
Did you hear that they were poisoning some of the water there so the fishermen couldn't fish? Yeah, it's crazy.
And they were,
what they're objecting to.
Coast Guard was trying to deliver supplies to a Filipino ship, and they came in and bumped them and was harassing them. So they want to control everything, you know?
Yeah.
You look what China is doing. What China is doing is reacting to American and generally Western, but particularly American reaction to their own aggression. What they're doing in the South China Sea. They lied to the world, as they always lie. They lie about everything, the Olympics and so forth. They lie about everything. But they lied and they said that those islands that they were expanding, those coral islands they were expanding, were not going to be used for military purposes. They lied. Then they make territorial claims on international waters, claimed by a half dozen nations. Okay? But then if you react to it, if you react to what they're doing, despite its potential threat to international navigation, and the fishing rights of the countries around the South China Sea and mineral exploitation rights of other countries. If you react to what they're doing, then they are up in arms and they hit the roof. How dare you react to our aggression?
Typical
That's what they say. But again, the first person who should be taken out and held accountable is Bill Clinton.
Didn't they sell? I mean, back in the 90s, they sold us this technology to China.
That $500,000 campaign contribution gave them missile technology.
Yeah,
to put
I mean, in a lot of ways,
in
North
orbit.
Korea would. Yes, that's right. North Korea got a lot of those the technology from China because it was given to them by the Clinton administration.
Yes.
Going back to that. So the aggression is there. Coast guards are boarding tourist boats, causing this to happen. But Jacob, also the escalation in Europe. Belarus announced a joint operation with Russia. The last time that happened, 4 days later, Russia invaded Ukraine. So Belarus, Lukashenko is absolutely in line. Lukashenko, sorry, is absolutely in line with what Putin's doing. And in the future plans, I don't know. But they are preparing, because he said, he came out, he said, we're preparing for NATO to retaliate.
What we said from the beginning was desperate people do desperate things. Tucker Carlson was not comprehensive in his assessment following his interview with Putin. He was not comprehensive. He did not do a very good job of his analysis overall. Okay, he really didn't. I have no love for the late night television comedians. They're all politically biased and they're not very talented or funny. The day of Johnny Carson and Jay Leno's and Jack Parr are all long gone. Now you got these clowns with greatly declined viewership, and rightfully so. But one of them was making fun of what Tucker Carlson said, and I was forced to agree with him. Tucker Carlson went into a Russian supermarket. Look how much I bought. This cost $100, $104 in American money for all these groceries. Yeah, but he's using purchasing parity. He's using purchasing parity. He's not using gross national product or gross domestic product. In other words, if you make less than $200 a week and you're spending over $100 on groceries, it's not that good of a deal.
No, it's 50% of your salary.
People from the United States will retire in Costa Rica because their money will go further. It's PPP. It's not GDP. And he really did a substandard job. He really did a substandard job in his interview with Putin. I was disappointed in Tucker Carlson. I really was.
But he did grab what he was smart about is he grabbed a controversial subject and bought a lot of publicity for his thing. So that he did good. The other side was terrible. But you
the
know,
substance was bad. The marketing was good. Yes, that's correct.
That's right. So you can't get everything right.
You know, speaking of that, I mean, every journalist should be trying to interview the opposition and try to figure out who these guys are and what they're doing. But none of them do that. That's like the one crime that you cannot do. You can't be a journalist anymore.
Correct. You have the growth. The Russian economy is growing, according to the IMF, faster than the Western economies. Bearing in mind, Germany and Japan and England, Great Britain, are all in recession.
Yes.
They're having a 2.5% growth. But what they're not telling you is it's because they've shifted to a wartime economy. It's being paid for by depletion of their foreign currency reserves, and it's being paid for with inflation. The ruble's worth a penny. They're not telling you the long-term the actual impact on the economy of Russia, even short term, much less the long term, where this defense production is not going to make Russia anything. They're just, oh, Russia has a higher GDP, higher growth in GDP than Europe. Yeah, but it's a wartime economy. Look at the reality of it. Where are they getting the money? Printing it, or depleting their foreign currency reserves? Again, it's just not. It's not good. It is just
Marco, we have another thing that we're actually having some of the same effect. Americans are now paying more for food as part of their budget than in the last 30 years. It's been 30 years since the food costs have been this high and been this affecting this many Americans on in their budgets, so people are freaking out, so
well,
right.
Look, if somebody voted for Obama and Biden and they're on a breadline, you put themselves there. That's just justice. It's again, it's the decent people, the working families who do not subscribe to that idiocy being hurt is what bothers me. You know what I'm saying? There's always innocent victims in these things.
Our Filipino missionaries are facing some of this too. Their costs and rice and this sort of things has gotten very high, and their inflation rate has been hurt. So but they are doing a good job for us. Jovelyn and Keith are learning Thai to sing, and so the songs that they take into the prisons for their is actually pretty good. Is what Scott and some other missionaries that speak Thai have said. But they are facing these types of challenges there, and also in Israel. When you say
Israel, Tel Aviv was already the most expensive major city in the world.
Yeah,
more than London, more than New York, more than Moscow, which is expensive, more than any of them. And now it's gotten worse. Israel is being hit, and is being hit badly by what's happening at the present time. And of course, we have missionaries there and have families and children and so on. This is what's going on. So if the Lord so moves you to make a contribution to more real Israel, please do it. But other places are being hurt too, even India, the third world. These places are affected.
Now we talked about the economy, but I'm going to go back to the war thing, because I know we jumped to the war.
Let's go back.
Lukashenko's got S-400 systems ready to go.
Correct.
Transnistria, it's trying to get annexed into Russia, and it's right by Moldova, Romania, and Ukraine.
Yes.
Jacob, these circumstances could change rather rapidly.
That can outflank, except that they have no access to a deep water port, to the Black Sea. Except that there's no access. They could outflank Ukraine on the west and drive a wedge between Moldova, which is Romanian-speaking NATO country. It's not Romania, but it's Romanian-speaking primarily, although the people also speak Russian and another language. It would be an outflanking. But what really troubled me this week was Medvedev threatening a nuclear attack on the West.
Yeah.
This is the first time since Nikita Khrushchev that this has happened. So explicitly, it's the first time since Nikita Khrushchev. Let's understand something. No matter what people say, Russia has been hurt. Not in the way or to the degree that the Western media likes to think, but Russia is being hurt long-term economically. Its long-term economic prospects are not good. Again, the ruples are being depleted, the foreign reserves are being depleted, and there's a brain drain. Next thing is to understand that something that nobody's talking about, hardly anybody outside of the intelligence community in the Pentagon. That is, Finland has stopped being Finlandized. It is now NATO. Sweden is coming on back of it. Putin, his motive in major part was NATO moving in an easterly direction. He has fueled that trend, creating another 740 miles of border with a NATO country. This is just blown up in his face. And the third is the national humiliation. that after 2 years, he's still not been able to defeat Ukraine because of Western intervention, despite the devastating and absolutely devastating impact on the Ukraine and the casualties and the depopulation and the refugees and the economic, almost virtual collapse of Ukraine. Despite that, it's a humiliation for Putin and for Russia. The other thing is he's created another 740 miles of border with a NATO country, and he's taken countries that were not NATO and he galvanized them into becoming NATO powers and increasing their own defense production. The historical hatred between Finland and even Sweden goes back to Peter the Great when the Russia tried to make the Baltic a Russian lake. These historical tensions are being revived.
Yeah.
People forget nations that have always been enemies will eventually become enemies again. That includes Russia and China. Even communism couldn't stop Russia and China from that armed conflict on the Arma River in 1968. It didn't matter that they were both backing North Vietnam against America and Australia. That didn't matter. Enemies remain enemies. The people of Southeast Asia, the Cambodians, the Kampucheans, the Vietnamese, doesn't matter if they're communist and the Chinese are communist. They had a war with each other. Enemies remain enemies. Friends tend to remain friends. But enemies always remain enemies. And the Scandinavian countries and Finland, which is not exactly Scandinavia, it's Myanmar. They're anthropologically related to the Hungarians. But anyway, they've always been historical enemies of Russia. And they are again. And Putin has caused this, and he knows it. Putin has a sense of history. If you look, he spent nearly the first hour in the interview with
Tucker
Carlson talking about Russian history. Notice he didn't bring up the historical tension between Russia and Scandinavia and conflict over the Balkans. He didn't want to talk about that because he knows it's happening again and it's his fault. On top of that is the national humiliation, and on top of that is the effect on the Soviet economy. He doesn't care about human life and Russians being killed and things like that. That doesn't bother him, obviously. But desperate people do desperate things. What Medvedev said should send alarm bells ringing in every capital in the world. And it's
No,
not.
there's no doubt.
The media is underreporting it. The
No,
media
no doubt.
is underreporting.
Even Putin said if he loses the war, he's going to nuke Germany and London, or
Yeah.
I think Munich and London.
Yeah, this is NATO Chief Stoltenberg. The F-16s that were given to Ukraine by the West will target outside of Ukraine. This is escalating as we speak, because although the F-16 is not stealthy, they can still have the S-400 and S-500 missile system can detect them and take them off. This is again the NATO response to what Russia's doing. So either side, Jacob, either side, David, there's only one type of that's gonna, if you're gonna win this war, unfortunately, and it's what Medvedev said, it's gonna be nuclear. Whoever's gonna win this is gonna be nuclear.
Only the F-35 and F-22 can outmaneuver the S-400 and S-500.
That's right.
Well, plus
That's
certain cruise missiles can go under their radar.
Yeah, it is. I'm talking about fighter. We're talking about fighter planes here.
Yeah, fighters. Yeah, but first they would send in jammers, and then they would send in the missiles.
What about Iran? Iran sending hundreds of ballistic missiles to Russia, though, because now we got other countries involved.
Yeah,
not only ballistic missiles but drones.
Yes, drone technology. Yeah, that was earlier. Yeah, this
Iran
is
the number one supplier of drones to Russia, not Russia.
It's interesting.
So again, that adds to the national humiliation. Countries like Iran and North Korea used to be the customers of Russia for armaments. Now Russia is the customer of Iran and North Korea.
Well, it kind of tells you something else too, Jacob, how basically the world has changed. The Middle East has become much more, if you want to call it that way, much more powder keg. And now you got big time players with big time war and military power there. As the West aids Ukraine, the Middle East is aiding Russia, and now you have several players involved. Something
more fundamental. During the Vietnam War, the American government took back or bought back Phantom jets, F-4s, from Iran, from the shore. The Americans sold them to Iran, but needed them for Vietnam, so they actually bought these F-4s back for the U.S. Air Force. But they were American jets. They were American technology. Russia is buying Korean technology and Persian technology. I mean,
it tells you
via China technology.
Yeah, Chinese technology.
China technology.
Chinese technology. Yeah, the other thing,
which is stolen American technology.
The other thing is they tried to make play leapfrog, so they come out with a hypersonic missile. Now the Americans have it. The Americans can make a hypersonic missile in 6 months, a prototype in 6 months, and have one working in a year to a year and a half. Now, what you know what I'm saying? It's
just escalated. It's all It's a
yes.
Jacob, what do you think of Zelensky going on an interview with Bret Baier saying, "Hey, I invite Trump, I invite Congress to come to Ukraine, see what's going on, to let them see, I should say." My interpretation should secure his aid, but to see the tragedy of Russia, the Russian invasion, weird stuff, isn't it? Not appealing to Biden, but
it does show that he suspects that Biden or the Democrats might not win the election.
Yeah, that's crazy.
President.
Right,
he's looking out for his own interest.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the growing contingency in the Republican lawmakers that they don't want to fund any more than the billions of dollars that they've gone to Ukraine, because it's been a slush fund for the Democratic Party and a slush fund for Zelensky and his corrupt officials. So he sees the writing on the wall and he wants to secure that. I thought it was interesting, though. I mean, of all people, appealing to Trump when he says he could have stopped the war a long time ago.
Yes.
Well, you got to remember, Trump has his finger on some of the people that want to be reelected representative and things like that. They're pro-Trump. So he's trying to do that. But I think if he was to go visit Zelensky and everything, the Democrats would probably bring him up. I forget the name of the act, but there's an act that if you're a private citizen, I know that a lot of the Biden administration, Obama administration violated it when Kerry talked to Iran, but that act, they could give him more political trouble. So I think he'll be careful in what he does.
Is it Morgan Act or something like that?
It's something like that. I don't know. We can look it up real quick. But Jacob, I showed you the brochure that was passed around in Sweden. I wish we could ask some of our brothers in Sweden about it. It was basically war's coming, prepare, an emergency preparedness brochure. And the country's issuing that brochure to, make sure the cyber attacks, if there's a war, if there's, defense issues, call this number, get water. I mean, this is not the only country that has done this. This is, again, Germany, Belgium, France.
But it does show something. It does show that they anticipate that Trump might win the election.
Yeah.
Because you either pay your share, minimum 2% of GDP on defense, or don't count on us anymore. And they're afraid that Trump would decouple from NATO unless they paid for their own defense. So they're coughing it up now. They're increasing their own defense spending.
Yeah,
but I think they've got to do it because they see Russia as a real threat here.
Yeah, but of course, the Democrats are saying, not looking at that, they're just saying, you see, Trump is trying to destroy NATO and remove America from NATO and let Putin have it. All he's saying is, if you want to be our ally, pay your fair share in the alliance.
That's right.
Get in line.
But the way the media and Biden are lying is just unbelievable.
All right, so we hit our hour mark already. So just wanted to make sure everybody knows and welcome them. If they're watching, if they caught us live, if they're catching us once the episode is up and running on YouTube, we want to welcome in the name of the Lord. We are catching up. And Jacob's here, Dave is here, Jay's here, Davey's here. And we want to make sure we continue. We will be going on backstage in a few minutes, and we'll be tackling an interesting subject, which is the way the media is portraying Christian nationalists, what other people are saying. And surprisingly, people you never thought possible are actually talking about Jesus and his return. And never even thought that they would actually think that way. And we've got some interesting opinions about it. So we'll play that at the end on backstage, but we won't be on YouTube or Facebook for backstage. So you have to jump to the other platforms. So if you're on Rumble, you can send the questions in. We got great questions, and that's going to be at the end on backstage. We got the questions. So if you want to send questions in, actually, this might sound funny, but I'm not trying to discourage questions, but there's so many questions already that it's going to take such a long time to get through them. So be patient with us, please. If you don't mind, be patient with us. Jacob can only handle 300 questions a day. That's his max. No, I'm kidding. But we can only question so many questions at a time. So I know
Marco,
people.
we might
Yes,
have
sir.
to do a special edition of backstage questions.
Oh,
Just
backstage questions, yeah. Or an AMA, ask me anything. We'll ask Jacob his favorite lunch. What would you have on Christmas morning? This is what's
Jewish rye
Jacob's
with
favorite recipe?
pastrami and
Yeah. Is it pastrami and rye or just pastrami
yeah,
and wheat?
Jewish rye.
Yeah, those kind of questions. Well, anyway, it's about lunchtime. We're getting hungry. What's that?
I ate some pastrami on Jewish rye yesterday. It was really good.
Hey, there we go. All right. Well, we're getting hungry, so we got to get Jacob out to lunch in a minute. But we got to continue. Jacob, this U.S. intelligence. This is the weirdest article that I read. U.S. intelligence about the possibility of Putin putting a nuclear weapon on orbit. This is from the Five Eyes, the European allies, the Five Eyes, the English-speaking allies, that there might be testing a nuclear weapon, putting it on orbit, and detonating it. Now, they're divided whether Putin would actually do it, but based on Medvedev's statements, you can possibly see that they could, if they're desperate enough. So this is a space war. And denial of these weapons existing was one time a big thing. Now it's pretty much admitted now that these two weapons do exist.
There's also the problem of orbital instability. There have been satellites that have crashed. There have been space shuttles that have crashed. There have been things like this where the debris has fallen to Earth. If you have nuclear debris falling to Earth, you've got a problem. Enough fissionable material. That is one of the reasons they have used batteries and used solar reflectors to power satellites instead of using miniature nuclear reactors like you'd have in a submarine, because of that very danger. Nobody has ever wanted to float a nuke before. Additionally, ideas that went back to the 1960s and 70s of removing nuclear waste by taking it out into space. What if the shuttle crashed and you had nuclear waste, fissionable material, or radioactive waste on a space shuttle? What would happen? Now, this policy, simply because of the fear of a crash or some kind of orbital instability or a disaster on takeoff that have happened, that is being shelved by Putin if he's going to develop such a weapon. If you put something that is nuclear, and it's a weapon, it's not just a nuclear generator, it's not just a reactor, it's a weapon. If you're going to put that in orbit, there's automatically a vulnerability of some kind of a system or technical failure. And then the United States would have to do two things. One, develop its own to maintain MAD, to maintain mutual assured destruction. The second is they would have to develop satellites that they can bring next to the Russian satellite and explode it and shoot it down. Shoot them up by, shoot that. They reckon that'd be the easiest way to shoot them down, is have another orbital satellite with detonation material on it that you could detonate it next to the Russian satellite. But then what about the nuclear fallout? What if it enters the Earth's atmosphere? Very, very dangerous what Putin is doing. Very dangerous.
Well, Jacob, if they exploded a nuclear weapon in outer space, then the chaos that would be on the Earth, the GPS systems going out, the guidance systems for planes, for communication systems all over the world with just one weapon, one bomb. It would just be chaos everywhere. So I don't know who knows how to read maps anymore, but you might want to buy a few.
Not only that, but Putin wouldn't be able to control beyond a limited degree it not falling on Russia. You know what I mean?
Yeah, to a certain degree.
He don't care about life. You've said it already, Jacob.
It's interesting. We just got a little update here. U.S. military is tracking a high-altitude balloon over Colorado. According to U.S. officials, it is not a threat at this point. It just kind of reminded me of what happened last year with the Chinese balloon
Yeah.
over certain states.
They're
It wasn't a
still
threat.
they're still sending those around. They're still
Yeah.
sending, but
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, yeah,
They're looking
this is
into the
raising the
purpose of the
question, is
balloon.
Biden compromised or is Biden a Chinese asset?
Right. The U.S. has sent military aircraft to investigate. Oh man, this bizarre. Anyway, let's talk about something much more dangerous than that, which is Neuralink. Neuralink. All kidding aside, Neuralink, the first human brain interface and recipient, is controlling now a mouse, a computer mouse, just by thinking. And this is the claim. So they got FDA approval. Now they moved into inserting it. The procedure went okay and successfully operated. Now the person is operating a computer mouse cursor with their thoughts, just with their thoughts. So amazing stuff. Jacob, is this thing going to improve? Are they going to put a halt to it just because it's so crazy?
Well,
Or are
as
they
we've been
gonna
saying for
interface with
30
AI?
years, as we've been saying, I hate to keep sounding like the risk of sounding like a broken record, but 30 years ago, we began talking about this stuff. And it's happened. That doesn't make me a prophet, but if it didn't happen, it would have certainly made me a false one. Anything that fallen man can use for evil, he will. The capacity of this technology to jump neurons, to jump dendrites in nervous tissue, cytons, can be used to treat blindness when you have people with dead optical nerves, dead audio nerves, deafness. You can use it to help people with motor neuron disease. The clinical potential for it to be used for good is obvious. But anything that fallen man can use for good, he will ultimately use for evil.
That's right.
What if you animate a corpse
Mm.
alive on artificial cardiovascular function by
Yeah.
artificial life support? That technology itself is getting better, and AI is going to revolutionize it, where you're going to have an imitation of not only of both sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, and of the autonomic nervous system.
Mm.
AI is going to, with this Neuralink technology combined with AI, you are going to have people who are going to be cyber zombies.
Yeah.
Will eventually create cyber zombies. They may have been brain dead, but what happens if you can pseudo reanimate neurological function with Neuralink technology combined with AI?
Whoa.
Look at Revelation 13. It's all going there. It is
Mm.
all going there.
Yeah. In terms of what you described, Jake, I mean, who is that person then? If there were to.
Yes.
Well, most
I mean,
TikTok users are already brain dead too.
Oh, Jay, that is such a. Oh man, that's a snide remark. You know,
Just
how
had
dare
to
you
put
insult
one in.
dead? How dare you insult dead people, comparing them to to TikTokers? No, but
You think about it. You think about it. Artificial respiration, okay, controlled by AI now, not just controlled by the kind of monitoring they've always had with oxygen levels, oxygen saturation levels being monitored in intensive care units. That's been around for a long time.
Yes.
What is going to happen when it can be done by taking over the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and autonomic nervous systems? What will happen when respiration will become independent of persistent monitoring in a hospital, and then the person can become animated by neurological manipulation? That's what we're talking about.
Incredible.
It will counterfeit the resurrection. You can bring somebody back to life. It'll look like you're raising the dead. It'll look like you were raising the dead. Right now, if you got somebody in an artificial life support system, okay, their heart is beating and they're breathing, but the physicians will tell the family they're brain dead. We have to shut this off. They only look like they're already. What's going to happen when you have neurological animation?
Yeah, and the person is back.
Combined with AI.
Yeah. Oh man, it's gonna be like a risen from the dead experience.
Revelation 13, man. Just look at it.
Now, Jacob, if they were to do that, and you talk about the person not being there or being there, and a demonic spirit taking over that.
I think they've already done it with Biden, but anyway.
Now, no wonder they
I
nominated.
think he's brain dead.
Yeah, reanimated. No wonder they nominated Musk for the Nobel Peace Prize, because advancements in science, advancement in technology, and free speech. This is, this is a stout proponent of free speech, says Maris Nielsen, a Norwegian member of parliament, who basically is the one that forwarded the nomination of Elon Musk to become Nobel Peace Prize. It's interesting, isn't it, that he's getting all these accolades from conservatives, from liberals, from technology, but AI is crazy. I mean, the Google AI, the Gemini one, that was nuts.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, it's racist, it's woke, it's anti-white, it's anti-whiteism,
Yes.
it's
anti-history. Period.
yeah,
It's
revisionist.
revisionist.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
literally like going to the Ministry of Truth and rewriting history to fit your political narrative, just like 1984. You get
Wow.
rid of the old evidence, you get rid of the old photographs, you get rid of the historical documents, you rewrite them, and you present them to form your narrative, whatever it needs to be. It's
Yeah,
literally 1984. It's today.
it is absolutely. The speech is different, right? You have to change words, you have to capitalize on that, and you have to make everything different. It's
Yeah. But
1984
I keep
words.
coming back to this thing. What's going to happen when you talk to a dead corpse, and instead of saying, "Hey Siri," you say, "Hello, darling." Somebody is talking to their dead spouse or something, and they think they're doing it.
Yeah, yeah, AI is going to be absolutely crazy. And I mean, obviously, this AI, it's racist, it's woke. But what about the ones that really are changing the way? I think Jay and I talked about Sora, right? The AI Sora by OpenAI.
Yeah.
Unbelievable image video making.
Yep.
Oh, man, you mentioned, Jay, it's going to change the studios.
It's going to change, destroy Hollywood as we know it.
Well, the foundations have been laid with YouTube and Rumble that
Yeah.
people will be making their own films. They will be making their own content. Content creators. You give
Yeah.
those same content creators access to something like Sora, and suddenly people who have always wanted to be directors, always wanted to make their own content,
Oh.
like episodics, they'll have the power to do them.
Oh man. But so, I mean, it's powerful. I mean, it is expensive, probably very expensive to run, but very powerful in terms of what it can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was impressed. I was just impressed by just what I saw and what I was able to see. But when talking to you about what they're going to do with Hollywood and the studios there, I mean, man, that is going to be a
That's one
game
with the
changer.
guy walking through the market in the winter with
In
cherry
Tokyo,
blossom
yeah.
blossoming in the winter time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It looks so real.
yeah. I mean, you can sort of create your own reality.
Yep.
You just sort of create your own reality. Oh, I want to do this, and this is what's happening with relationships, right? We're talking about Jay. These guys that are becoming lonely and desperate, and they go get AI girlfriends. I think David brought it
That's
up
right.
earlier, and you create your own reality. I want to go out with whoever, boom, 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 and I want to be seen with whoever, and you put it out, and there you are, walking along with your favorite. I guess your favorite
AI girlfriend.
Yeah.
your favorite AI girl.
If I may real quickly go back and connect some dots. So
Yeah.
imagine Sora being able to interface with something like Neuralink, where suddenly you don't even need to use a
An
text
interface.
prompt. You think
Yeah.
it, and it is.
Yeah, that's where it's going. You got 100% right, 100% right, and you're gonna want to do it because
Who doesn't want to
dopamine,
create
all
their
those-
own reality?
Yeah, but it'll have this reward system, where you're just gonna be in this world to create. What Jacob's been saying, to create your own reality through video game.
Be your
images,
own God.
be
Yeah.
your own
right.
god. You could become anything you want.
Yeah.
Look,
Yeah.
remember we warned about virtual simulators 25, 30 years ago?
Yeah, unbelievable,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Marco, can I bring up AI and jobs?
Yeah. Let's finish that off real quick, and then we'll move on to Israel, and we'll be done with the episode. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, this past week in Mumbai, India, there was a big AI conference, and if you're familiar with India's call center servicing sector, which they pioneered. It's a $250 billion business. It's works in a lot in there in India, as well as in the Philippines, Malaysia, some other places where English is taught, or even in other languages from Europe. They use so the prime minister has said, oh, AI is not going to, last year said AI is not going to cost us any jobs because we're going to retrain people along the way. But now this year he's saying it's going to cost lots of jobs. So the tune has changed, and this is going to affect a lot of people in the business. You're either going to have to make yourself more important and understand AI and other things. But if you're just doing repetitive tasks, they can be taken over by, or if you're compiling data, you can be replaced by a machine. And trust me, anybody that owns a business in this sector that could use a machine instead of human labor, they'll do in a minute.
Yeah, that's why in California they're trying to make these outrageous, I think there's some assemblymen and congressmen that $50 an hour, $20 an hour minimum wage. I'm like, that's never going to work because companies won't really ever hire anybody for that. If they do ever hire, it'll be temporarily, and they'll be replacing it with robotics and AI.
Yeah. I mean, isn't McDonald's already doing that, replacing people?
Kiosks are taking people at the register, taking away their jobs, and then you also have robotics that are being used to cook now. In fact, LA has their first, I believe it's no human being, as far as they have a flippy robot that flips the burger. They have another robot that creates the fries, and they have a self-service kiosk where you press your order, it comes out. And they have robots that now serve drinks and serve food in restaurants. If you haven't seen those, they come to your table, they deliver your drink, and go back, and they give you a little wink and a smile.
There is one good thing about this. You can actually yell at the AI for the robot for messing up your order, and it won't hurt its feelings.
Oh man, yeah.
Plus, you don't have to tip. You don't have to tip them.
Nope.
Oh, they'll ask for it. Trust me. On behalf of the owner.
Yeah. David, you remember we stayed at, I don't know what hotel it was one time, and then you can ask for a toothbrush or a towel, and they'll send a robot up there. Yeah,
they send a robot up there. That's actually at the Hilton,
and it's in LA
down at the airport, and they have them. They have them in overseas and
they've had them in
other
Japan
places.
for a while.
Yeah,
Japan.
You don't have to send anybody up. It comes and then it rings your doorbell or calls you. And then you go to the door, and there's this robot with a little tray that presents you.
Let me say this something real quick.
You actually find yourself saying thank you to a robot.
Yeah, exactly. It's great. No, they have these things.
Mark my words, everyone. I say this to everyone who's listening. Mark my words. I don't know if it'll be 10 years or less, or 12 years or 15 years. I don't know when it's coming. But you will not just have AI, you will have double AI, autonomous artificial intelligence.
Yeah, doing their own. Yeah, absolutely. That's gonna be insane.
But a robot's gonna ask for a tip, but not for the restaurant owner. He's gonna want the tip for
himself. Go ahead, Davey. You had something to say. Go ahead, jump in.
Oh, I was just thinking with all the AI and the way things are going, it's kind of like more and more and more all the time. I appreciate how God's created us. He's created us with their own distinct personalities. There are things that AI, at least at present, AI is soulless, and even computer generated imagery lacks something. It lacks something that traditional animation, things like that, have always had. It's kind of like, I kind of like imperfections of humanity coming through in people's work as an artist and that kind of thing. It's an expression of a person. thankfully, at the moment, AI is soulless. I think the dangerous thing is, okay, we have that bit in Revelation where
Yep.
breath is breathed into the
Yep.
image.
We did that on
That is,
RTN. We did that on Word for the Weekend on RTN.
yep. At the moment, it can't do that, and all it can be is cold and you know, almost too perfect. It's
Yeah.
kind of like with AI generated imagery. It always looks a little bit too perfect sometimes.
Yes.
It's kind of so I kind of appreciate all their little peculiarities as people
Yes.
more and more as we see this sort of stuff coming down the track.
All
And
right.
anything that can be computerized is always hackable too. It's
Yes.
kind of
Yeah.
like playing dangerous ground.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of that is heading
Correct.
toward. Final subject before we move on to backstage. Israel among the nations. Jacob, let's talk a little bit about that. Brazil severs a relationship with Israel. Lula's again wreaking havoc in Brazil and South America. You got Maduro. You got in Bolivia. These guys are very communist, very pro-Muslim, pro-Iran, anti-Jew. You have Javier Milei, very pro-Israel, very pro-Jew in
Yes.
Argentina. They seem to be prospering, although always with the grain of salt, we have to take what he says. But then you have the West, by Blinken, Biden, and Cameron putting pressure on it. So let's talk about Latin America. We'll move on to what the West is doing, and we'll finish with the Prince Williams and his comments on it.
Of one thing we may be sure, Brazil has economic problems. BRICS is not going to solve its problems, and its problem will get worse. Now, not that they've cursed Israel, it's going to become worse still. It's inevitable. It is inevitable. The one good thing about these countries like Bolivia, or their government, and Brazil and Venezuela, just look at Venezuela, look at Cuba.
Oh,
No
man.
country that goes in that direction is ever successful economically. They all implode economically. They all become basket cases. Look at Cuba. Look at Venezuela. Look what the Contras did. None of them ever become successful. Brazil is going the same way as Bolivia. Argentina realized this stuff doesn't work. Argentina, they went from the Peronistas to some kind of left-wing movements. It was so crazy. And now it's gone in a free market, pro-Israel, pro-American direction. And things are improving because they blessed Israel. That is Latin America. What these countries do is not going to matter long term because their economies are going to decline. How can a country with the oil resources of Venezuela more than Saudi Arabia? All right, it's not as light. The crude is not as light as Saudi Arabia. But how can a country with that kind of oil reserves be in the trouble it's in? People eating dog food. It just doesn't work. So I'm not too worried about the long-term repercussions of those countries, even though they may gravitate towards China or something like this. It doesn't matter. Now, it matters, but not to the degree they would like to think. What happens in Britain, though, is something else. Now you've got what you see in the United States. The Labour Party in Britain is like the Democratic Party in the United States. You've got a state that went for Trump in 2016. You've got Michigan. It can go either way. But because of Biden and Clinton, I'm sorry, because of Bush and Clinton, you've got a large Islamic population in not only Twin Cities, not only in Minnesota, but you've got it also in Detroit, particularly
Michigan. Oh, huge.
and in
Yeah.
Dearborn. And in
Dearborn.
Dearborn. Without that Islamic vote, the question now becomes, can the Democrats hold that state? The Democrats are looking, the Muslims are reacting against Biden's forced support for Israel. Okay.
That's right.
Okay. You've got the same thing in Britain with the Labour Party. Extreme anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. The party leader was deposed, replaced by another person who claims not to be anti-Semitic. But the power of the Islamic vote in Britain and radical Islam and radical pro-Hamas even is such that the Labour Party is caught between a rock and a hard place. Can it support Israel without repercussions? No. Can it support Hamas without repercussions? No. This has happened. So Islam is playing its card in Michigan, and it's playing its card in England. The Scottish National Party, which is left-wing, and again, an economic disaster, everything they touch turns to excrement, literally. They have a radical pro-Palestinian or a radical, essentially pro-Hamas policy, demanding Britain stops all military sale of military hardware to Israel and so forth. The Labour Party is divided over it. Big, big problem. It's also affected the Conservative Party, but not to the degree that has affected Labour. Step up Prince William, the next king. Look at what has happened. He has now spoken out. Now remember, in most of the world, they are taking the casualty and fatality statistics of Hamas as fact. We know that Hamas is exaggerating the figures of civilian casualties in Gaza.
Oh,
and
yes.
they're not telling you that what civilian casualties there are is because Hamas is using their own people as human shields. So we're using our people as human shields, and you've killed 5,000, but we're going to say you killed 10,000. That's what is happening. And of course, the mainstream media is more than happy to report the lie as fact. Second, they look to the United Nations, the United Nothing, for moral credibility. In fact, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, which does not even exist, there's no reason for Palestinian Arabs to have their own UN agency. Why don't the people in Rwanda or Burundi have that? You know what I'm saying? But they have their own because of the corruption of the UN and the power of the Islamic world. Okay, so now there's irrefutable evidence of UN collaboration.
Yeah, UNRWA.
Hamas terror.
Yes.
How can you appeal to the UN as a moral source of anything when it's engaged in active cooperation with Islamic terror? But you're supposed to ignore that as well. And the media and governments are doing it. Okay. But now we have something else, the British monarchy. Two things, or three, actually, three things have happened to the British monarchy. One is Brexit. Before Brexit, the British monarchy as an institution represented emblematically British sovereignty against an encroaching, unelected socialist bureaucracy of Brussels and the EU. There were people who supported the monarchy because of what it represented in terms of the British heritage and identity against an encroaching EU bureaucracy subverting British democracy. People supported the monarchy because of its emblematic power and its link with history. And the British history, you have to understand, is the way English people think, or British people think, particularly the English. We resisted Napoleon. We resisted Henry VIII. We resisted Europe. We always, the Battle of Trafalgar, Lord Nelson, there's the Spanish Armada, Spanish Strait defeating. It was always Britain against the continent. We kept ourselves, and this was the Second World War. Hitler's not going to get us. Napoleon's not going to get us. In the Reformation, the Pope is not going to get us. You know what I'm saying? The Pope tried to get control of Britain with Queen Mary and things like that. Okay, so that was always their history. Not since William the Conqueror has anybody from the continent conquered Britain. William the Conqueror was a French-speaking Viking. Okay, he was not a Latin European. Okay, that was always what happened. So the monarchy was a representation of resistance to domination of Britain by the continent. Okay, once Brexit happens, they no longer need it for that. It no longer has a valuable political significance of any kind, not even symbolically. Okay, it doesn't represent anything anymore because it has no reason to. British sovereignty is not under threat from Europe anymore. Not in the same way, to the same degree at least. Okay, so the monarchy is not so important. Secondly, Queen Elizabeth was personally respected. This goes back to the fact that she was queen so long. Since 1953, She won the respect of people by the way she conducted herself and the way she ran the monarchy. And she was a princess during the Second World War. Her parents were really, again, rallying points for the British nation against Hitler and the Blitz. Okay. And she was the daughter of that. So she was respected. She was even, respected by the Irish, ironically.
Interesting.
Which does not all the Irish, but a lot of them, they were okay with her. She's gone now. When she died, the respect and integrity of the monarchy died with her. Then you have, oh boy, the death of Princess Diana killed the glamour associated with the monarchy. There's no more glamour associated with the monarchy since Princess Diana died. No more. Camilla, that Charles was apparently committing adultery with, she does not have the glamour. She does not bring the glamour that Princess Diana did to the monarchy. So the glamour is gone, the political significance is gone, and the respect of the monarch personally is gone. Prince Charles does not command the respect his mother did, not even an inch of it. Okay? Then you have the rest of the royal family. Prince Andrew, his brother, was down with Jeffrey Epstein on that island with Bill Clinton with the underage girls.
Yes.
He's stripped of all of his royal titles and functions, basically. The police were wanting him and questioning in the States. He paid these big lawyers to get himself off the hook, but he's hiding now. He doesn't come out in public anymore. He doesn't function at royal functions anymore. Nothing like that. So that's Prince Andrew's gone. Okay. The Queen's sister is old. She's not really relevant anymore. So then you've got the prince's two sons. Harry and Meghan are a joke in Britain. Nobody respects them. They accused the Queen Elizabeth of being a racist and things like this, which she certainly was not. They were on Oprah and made clowns of themselves in the eyes of not only the British people, but I think of people in a lot of countries. Certainly other Commonwealth countries like Australia, New Zealand, they're not popular figures. They're even ridiculed by the tabloids in Britain and things like this. So Diana's gone, the Queen is gone. We have Brexit now. There's no political relevance to the monarchy. Prince Andrew is morally discredited. His aunt is really old. And you got these two sons, one of whom is married to a grade D Hollywood actress wannabe, who's seen as a bimbo, generally. And she's only half black anyway, but she plays the race card. She's alienated from her own father and so forth. And then that leaves Prince William, heir to the throne. He's looking to save the monarchy. He knows he's going to be the next king. What's he going to do? He tries to get political. What's the easiest way to do it? Attack Israel. Too many people have been killed, he says. By whose statistics? Hamas? Are you counting the members of Hamas who the Israelis have killed? He comes out, the Queen never would have done that. Never would have done that. He has to accept the fact that he doesn't want to accept, that the monarchy no longer has any purpose whatsoever other than to bring in American and Japanese tourists who want to see pomp and pageantry, who want to take pictures of Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle and Sandringham and Balmoral Castle in Scotland, and of Clarence House, and watch the changing of the guards and the parade and the concert that goes with it. And they want to go to St. James Palace and get the picture taken next to the Grenadier Guard with the bearskin hat and everything like that. And they want to go to the Tower of London to see the crown jewels. It has no other purpose other than it brings in foreign exchange and foreign tourist revenue. That's the only real purpose of the monarchy. It helps the British economy in the sector of tourism. It has no other purpose anymore. The Queen is gone. The glamour is gone with Diana long ago. Okay. Queen Elizabeth, God bless her memory, she was respected, but she's no longer with us. Then you've got her son Andrew, the perv, down with Epstein and them and Clinton and them, the other pervs. Okay, and then you've got Harry and Meghan with Oprah. Okay, attacking the monarchy in the media, and now you've got this other. Now you've got William. That is the situation. Pandering to radical Islam to try to give himself some kind of a meaning or viability, because he's the beneficiary of an institution that, apart from tourism, is otherwise obsolete. It is politically obsolete. Now, there are countries in the world where you've had a lot of political instability, where the monarchy brought a sense of stability that was needed. Example, Thailand, where you have the yellow shirts and the red shirts fighting each other and things like that. The king of Thailand did help bring a national sense of cohesion and stability. The monarchy served a practical purpose, or serves a practical purpose in Thailand to a degree, okay? But that's not the case in England. It no longer has, since Brexit, it no longer has a viable political function. So he needs some way to try to make himself relevant. Well, kick the Jews. That's it.
That seems to be always the easiest solution, isn't it?
He's a tourist attraction. He's nothing but a tourist attraction.
He's a circus, man. He's
a subject for the tabloid press.
Yeah.
When he gets a toothache or something.
I think he's not a circus. I think he might be a freak show, actually.
Yeah.
Bearded lady. Yeah. Very good, Jay. No, absolutely. It's become, anyway, there's much to say on that, but it's become such a ridiculous, but it's normal, isn't it? When you have things like that, has-beens and people that don't bear any meaning anymore, the easiest way to do it, to get some publicity, is to attack the Jews. It's similar to churches. It's weird. Churches that have gone ecumenical and pro-LGBT, and they don't matter anymore in terms of the Christian faith. They jump on the anti-Israel, anti-Jew bandwagon. That's really what they do.
Of course. It's like the Catholic Church jumping on the illegal immigrant bandwagon. Because people are leaving the Catholic Church or just not attending it, so they bring in people from the third world who still go to church to replace their ranks. I mean,
yeah, unreal. I did want to say something before we finish. I just thought about this, Jacob, and this might be a good point to remember. Brazil and the anti-Jewish rhetoric that they're having with the president, Bolivia, Venezuela, Cuba, for a smaller extent, Nicaragua. The population of Brazil is 214 million. It's huge. It's a huge population. Second to the U.S. and Latin America.
And the size is massive.
Massive.
Than the rest of South America put together.
And they one of the things that have happened over the last 30, 40 years, and there's the growth of evangelical Christianity, abandoning Catholicism. That's where the Pope was always going to Brazil, trying to preserve it. And in Cuba, lots of believers coming to faith because of what they've suffered. Venezuela, same thing. So
I've just been invited to Cuba, and they tell me there's 76 churches.
Oh, at least, yeah.
No, just the ones I was invited to. It was one movement, 76 churches, and they want to bring all the pastors and leaders together just to hear me say.
Praise God.
That's just one of them.
Yeah.
There's many more.
Yeah. Cuba para Cristo. That's really an important thing. But so we have to pray for them. We have to pray for these believers in those persecuted in those countries. They are persecuted, and they're very anti-Israel, very anti-Jewish, and so they're at a crossroad. There's a lot of believers in Brazil are not anti-Jewish. They're not anti-Israel, but the government is.
The Pentecostals of Latin America are generally pro-Zionist.
That's right. And then you have a very pro-Israel president in Argentina, and so we pray for that. There's lots of work that the Lord's going to do, and I think to echo Jacob's words that the Lord will give rain, the Holy Spirit, to the Latin community before Jesus comes. So much prayer for that.
Notice already there's been an improvement in the Argentine economy.
Oh yeah, they got a surplus now. All of a sudden,
already it's improving.
Yeah.
Bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curse thee.
That's right.
Problems. That's already got problems. We're going to get worse.
Well, our knowledge, our dollar just tanked this week, and we've got Penny Wong and Elbow turning against Israel, and Elbow's too busy going to Taylor Swift concerts, and who's the other rock star he's going to? An opening queer museum. So
Yeah.
we're doing that judgment at the moment.
Well, Albanese will always get a chance to go to a queer museum if he had a chance. He's always going to get to that point. So thank you guys so much. We're going to be jumping on Backstage. Catching Up has come to a close on this. The other side of Catching Up is Backstage. Jump from YouTube, jump from Facebook, go to the other side and catch us on Rumble, on Memorial.tv, memorialtv.org, Vimeo, Telegram, and we'll see you on Backstage in just a few minutes.